excited to announce the new season of our Leader to Leader series. This season, I'm delighted to speak with the aviation sustainability pioneer, Kennedy Ricci from 4Air, to explore some of the most groundbreaking innovations shaping the future of the sustainability in aviation.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you on board of our Global Express and looking forward to have a very thoughtful conversation.
Yes.
Let me start, Kennedy, with the first question that I have. What are the most promising technologies, advancements in SAF production and adoption happening today?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to it. I think sustainability is one of the, biggest issues I think that our industry faces right now. If you look, 50 years ago, safety was really the preeminent issue, and it took a while for us to get to the point where we're at today. But now, safety is just fundamental to who we are. It's part of the industry. Every operator needs to be safe, and to do anything against that would kind of be, not even considered. Now, I think sustainability is at the beginning phases of that as well. It's going to become part of our license to operate. But aviation's difficult to decarbonize. We don't have an easy, way to do it. In the ground, we can use electric vehicles, but it's very difficult to electrify an aircraft. The batteries are just too heavy, and hydrogen's a long way away. So when we look at technologies that we can use that will work on existing airplanes, that will be, transformative for aviation, sustainable aviation fuel is really the key. And the way it works is you're actually using fuel from kind of a recycled carbon source. It's the same jet fuel, runs the same in the aircraft, same fuel tanks, fuel trucks, nothing needs to be changed. But you're able to use this fuel essentially instead of digging up oil out of the ground, you're using a recycled carbon source that was already in the atmosphere. So this makes it more circular, and reusing that carbon makes it more sustainable. So I think these technologies, these SAF producers, there's about a dozen of them across the world today, are helping really, drive a key technology for decarbonizing aviation as we move forward.
Great. That leads me to my next question, actually. As SAF evolves, how can leaders in the aviation industry ensure that its developments remain both environmentally and economically sustainable, particularly in terms of cost?
Sustainable aviation fuel is more expensive than regular jet fuel, but we're at a really important phase right now where there is still limited quantities of it. So the more people we have engaging, even using kind of 1, 2, or 3% of their fuel as sustainable aviation fuel, it's a very small impact on the cost of operating an aircraft, and helps really show that there's demand for SAF moving forward, and helps scale up the future production of SAF availability. Most people, when they look at SAF, using SAF, they kind of consider an all or none approach. And that's really not the right way to look at it. It's looking at how can I prime the pump a little bit? How can I use a little on my aircraft to show that this is important to me as an organization, to fuel suppliers, so that they continue to invest in it. So the best recommendation we have today is just start using a little bit. It doesn't need to be everything, but every little bit helps show that demand.
Okay, so step-by-step approach.
Step. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
With the global momentum building around SAF, how do you see recent regulatory changes or government incentives influencing innovations and investment in the SAF development? Are they doing enough?
Regulation's keeping us quite busy because there's a lot of momentum around the world. So you kind of have two approaches right now. In the US, there's a little bit more of an incentive approach. So you get tax credits for producing SAF or for using SAF. Around Europe and other countries, there's more of a mandate to use it. So fuel suppliers will have to produce that fuel and supply it to aircraft operators. And both are just getting started right now. So we're going to see over the next probably 5 years, which areas are most successful, what regulations and what incentive approaches are going to be most successful at driving that future production. So it's an exciting time because I think we're seeing, how those evolve in real time. But between, what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the US, you have, several billions of dollars of incentives and mandates and penalties combined that will help spur the adoption of SAF. And it's moving beyond Europe at this point as well. So for the next 5 years, an additional 8 countries have mandates that will come online. Everything from China, Korea, Japan, India, Malaysia, Turkey. We're seeing a really wide expansion of support for SAF outside of kind of the main aviation hubs as well. So it's great to see that growth.
What is the contribution of 4Air in these initiatives?
Our goal is to make sustainability easy and accessible. We saw 4 years ago when we launched the company that this is hard. How do I make sure I document my sustainable fuel appropriately? How do I make sure I buy actually sustainable, fuel? How to make sure I can use it in my airplane? How do I track that, and how do I report that to authorities? So we handle any voluntary sustainability program using carbon offsets or SAF, any regulatory compliance, so like CORSIA or different international and European emission schemes. We do all the work for you. So you let us know how sustainable you want to be, what airplane you're flying on, and we do all the rest.
And I know also you're part of so many regulatory bodies that advocate for sustainability. Can you just tell us more about it?
So I think, regulation is doing an important job of driving a lot of the change around in support for sustainability, but we, see regulation that doesn't make sense sometimes.
Yeah.
So our goal is just to work, with them to show that this is something aviation is taking on itself, because we do see if you don't step up to the plate, regulation will force you to do so.
Yeah.
So this is coming, whether we like it or not. I like to say, hopefully you do it because it's the right thing, but you're going to have to anyway. So we want at least that regulation to make sense for us. Let it work with us, that it'll help drive decarbonization and not, just cost operators more money. So we're involved in both, US, Europe, and internationally on different regulatory bodies to help them say, here's what we're doing, here's what makes sense, and here's changes or things to consider to help support us more.
Great. That leads me to my last question is, in terms of SAF commercialization, what are the most significant challenges actually we are seeing today? And how are the industry leaders responding to ensure SAF becomes a good solution for airlines in the near term? We know that a lot of GA operators has implemented the SAF, and we've done some test flights for some commercial airlines, but making it more commercially feasible. I mean, what are the challenges that you see?
One interesting thing around sustainable aviation fuel is, even though the end product is something that's safe to use on an existing aircraft and the same as jet fuel, there's a lot of different ways to get there. So we're at a point where the industry is exploring different technologies and approaches, feedstock sources for the carbon to get there. And it's really looking at, how do those different mandates and regulatory incentives factor into the way they're producing. So one of the most interesting technologies or approaches we see today is something called co-processing. And it's where you can actually make SAF through an existing refinery. You're able to mix in the source of that carbon into a traditional, refinery stream. So anybody who's an existing oil producer is able to start making SAF in kind of limited quantities that way. And we see a lot of the increasing production within Europe and some of the investments in the Middle East around supporting this approach, because you're utilizing assets that are already there.
Right.
So that's going to be a really transformative approach, I think, in the next decade, because we're going to be able to really ramp up the production amount we make of SAF really quickly.
Are you helping currently any commercial airlines, or are you still only doing with the GA operators?
We do support some commercial airlines as well. One of our goals, we focused on business aviation. That was the industry we knew and were from, and wanted to help out. But we wanted to see what could we learn from business aviation that would help us decarbonize commercial aviation. I think business aviation has a unique opportunity. We're a small segment of the overall industry, but we're leaders, I think, in technology. If you ever look at the flight deck of a business aircraft versus an airliner, you immediately see the technology difference between the two. So I think sustainability can be the same. And so what can we learn here that will help commercial aviation decarbonize? And that's our goal.
I think also we want business aviation to be a leader in sustainability and be an example that the commercial airlines will follow.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kennedy Ricci from 4Air, for coming with us on this Leader to Leader series in the MEBA 2024 on our Global Express. It was very informative discussions. Thank you for the information that you shared, and wish to see you in the next shows.
Thank you very much. It's a wonderful airplane, and I look forward to having it fly in SAF.
Thank you.
Thanks.